so cozy right now, motherfuckers. This year, in terms of books, and in terms of everything else, but in terms of books, has been such a banger of a year. What an amazing reading year. Also, what an amazing year in general. But in terms of books, I started this channel because I read so many awesome books and it inspired me to start talking about books online. I'm just so grateful for every book I've read this year, and especially for the gothic books I'm gonna talk about in a bit. I'm so happy that I started this, and I'm just so happy to keep going and to keep doing this because it brings me so much joy. And thank you for watching. Some people actually watch these videos, which is insane to me. So if you are watching, thank you for giving a rat's ass about what I read for some reason. Okay, I've broken it down into some categories. To close off the year, I'm going to talk about the best and the worst books I've read so far. I've kind of looked at my reading list of like the 32 or something books that I've read so far, and I tried to come up with certain like themes or genres to talk about. So I chose these categories: fantasy, rom-com, deep romance. I read a lot of classics, and I also read a lot of gothics, and I read a lot of romances in general. I think romance was my most read genre. That's why there's like different variations of different genres. But I chose a depressing classic category. I also chose the gothic category, of course, paranormal romance, and cozy fantasy. So these are my categories. Okay, category 1, fantasy. The worst fantasy book I've read. Again, keep in mind, I've read a lot of like kind of cross-genre books. So the worst fantasy books I read this year, which is really harsh, it is A Dark and Drowning Tide. It started off so well, and then it just flopped really intensely for me. The reason that it flopped so intensely was because the setup of the book was so expansive, as if it was supposed to be like a three-part series, at least a duology. But then when, everything wrapped up in the end of this one standalone book, it felt really rushed and not thought out at all. And it took away from the reading experience for me because I was just really confused about how this makes any sense within the context of the book. We start out with this really giant quest. It's quite literally like a world-ending quest. We are basically looking to capture the source of magic in this world, right? And so we follow this group of I think 6 people, and they're all from this one university. They try to find the source of magic or whatever so that they can keep it for this king. And the thing is that I loved the characters so much. It felt a little bit in the beginning like reading Six of Crows. So all of these different really awesome characters that you get to meet, and their personalities are so different, and the little things that they like are so different, and it makes it so interesting to read. I personally love that kind of stuff, like found family, kind of like ragtag group of misfits stuff. So I was really excited about it at first, and I really enjoyed it at first. At about maybe 60 or 70%, there's just no way that this is a standalone book. It really didn't feel like a standalone at all. And on top of that, the romance is not great. Yeah, the romance didn't make me root for the characters to end up together, because one of the characters, the main character, is kind of a bitch to the other person, and I just don't really like that. Rivals to lovers or enemies to lovers in general, it's not really my thing at all. Steamy scenes came out of literally nowhere. I'm not gonna lie, I was like, what is happening? There's also that element, the political element, that I felt like wasn't really explored very well at all. So they're trying to capture this magic source for this king, and the king is quite clearly a piece of shit. He's a really evil person, but for some reason that's not clear to the characters until the end. He was obviously evil, and for some reason nobody in the book could understand that he's evil. It just made me feel like I was very disconnected from the characters and what they were going through. So that's why it's the worst fantasy I read. The best fantasy I read was Slewfoot by Brom. This one is such a unique book. I have really never read anything like this before. The writing style is that of almost like a fairy tale, like, you know, when you read like Brothers Grimm fairy tales, and it's very like fast paced, like there's stuff happening every paragraph, like there's something different happening, or like the time moves really fast. You know, you read like a paragraph and it's like the next month or in the next year or something like that. That's how Slewfoot read to me. It was very fast paced. I could tell it was a quick read, but it took me personally a long time to read it because it deals with a lot of misogyny and a lot of heavy topics that like women go through, and I just didn't really feel like sitting down and like reading about a woman being tortured by society for a couple of hours every day. It took me forever to finish it, but oh man, when I finished it. This book follows a woman called Abatha, and she's an immigrant from England. The year is 1666, and she's a settler in like New England somewhere, and she lives with her husband. There is some sort of monster creature in the woods that she comes in contact with, and then it goes from there. And it's very much about witch hunts, like witchcraft, like women that were accused of witchcraft. What I found really beautifully done was the fact that the reason for what happens to her and like the whole witchcraft element has actually nothing really to do with the magic at all. It has everything to do with the society that she's in. This is a book where you can't really spoil much because the book kind of spoils itself. Like the cover of the book is a spoiler in and of itself. So I'll just, you know, say it. If you really don't want to know anything at all, like skip ahead, I guess. If you don't care, just keep watching. The reasons she gets accused of witchcraft is not because of anything that she would have done, like anything magical. The reason she gets accused of witchcraft is because of misogynistic asshole men who think that they are entitled to her property and they're entitled to her like service, her life, essentially, like her fate. I thought that that was so beautifully done. It is really a commentary on this like religious psychosis that women paid the price for more often than not. Men as well. Men were not excluded from witch hunts at all, but in this case it's about a woman, and it was mostly women that were victims of witch hunts. So it was so beautiful to read about that, like about that experience that she had and how she came out of it, the demise, like how she, you know, what leads to all of the shit hitting the fan. And then what I loved the most though, I mean, it was all of the like really cool magic and all of the really cool like forest elements. It's very like folklore. I love the imagery of it and the world building of it too, but my favorite part was the revenge. So you know when you read a book or you watch a movie and it's about revenge and something bad is happening to a character for like ages, and then the person that abuses them is just like shot in the head and it's a very quick death. This is not the case for this book. Very drawn out. Torture is very drawn out. Like the revenge is very meticulous and cathartic. Oh my god. I probably had like the craziest face while reading the last like 40 pages of this book. I was just like I felt so intense reading this. Yeah, I absolutely loved it. Okay, next category is rom-com. I read a lot of rom-coms this year, especially in the last like few months. I think I started reading them in August, or no, in July actually. This year was really an Ali Hazelwood year for me. Ali Hazelwood is my most read author this entire year. I read 4 of her books. Let's start with the worst rom-com I have read this year. It is Book Lovers by Emily Henry. It is my first Emily Henry book. It's about this like publisher woman, and she's kind of a girl boss. She's from a big city. Every boyfriend she's ever had dumped her for the small town girl. So you know how in Hallmark movies or like other types of rom-coms, you get like the big city hotshot who moves into a small town and meets like a really wholesome girl who likes to farm and realizes that life is more than just money and corporate, you know, work, and dumps their like corporate girlfriend, corporate big city girl boss girlfriend in the big city and goes for like this small time farm girl. So she, the main character of this book, is the big city girl boss girl that gets dumped every time. And it's like a cliche in her life. She moves into this small town with her sister for like a while for vacation. Her sister's pregnant, so before she gives birth to her baby, she's like has a list of things she wants to do. That's why they took this vacation. And then she meets, or rather reconnects, with this guy that she met in New York who's also in the editing publishing business. So I think he is an editor, she's a publisher, and they spend time in this small town. The guy is actually from the small town, so it kind of like works out. Just didn't really make a really big impression on me. I don't really think about this book ever. It's not too bad. I liked the sisterhood in this book a lot. I don't know, I didn't really like the romance. Not necessarily because I thought that they were bad people or anything like that. I think the characters were fine. I just didn't see them together. I didn't root for them. I wasn't like, oh my god, I hope they end up together. You know, I didn't really care. Also, the main character kind of pissed me off. I'm not a big fan of workaholics in general. Like reading about workaholics is not my thing. I don't find like bad work-life balance to be something that I like want to read about. I didn't really find it not only relatable. Yeah, I don't think you have to find books relatable in order to like them, but for things like rom-coms, I feel like there's got to be a level of likability or relatability for you to enjoy the book. I didn't like the fact that she promised her sister that she was going to take a vacation with her, and that she basically ended up working the entire time on vacation. Like that's what pissed me off the most. Like if I am going somewhere with my sister and I know I need this vacation, and she knows I need this vacation, and she needs this vacation, and then she promises me that she's not going to work and she's going to spend time with me, and then she spends her entire time working, I would be livid. I think that that's a really bad thing to do. I think that that is really disrespectful, to be honest, and I just really hated that. Oh, also, the dialogue was really cringe because it was like, I think in my reading wrap up I compared it to Gilmore Girls, but like in a bad way. I still stand by that. This was the worst. The best rom-com I have read this year. Love Theoretically takes the cake for this one. Oh my god. I don't think I talked about this one at all on my channel. This book literally changed my entire life. It is set in this kind of like academia environment. So both of the main characters are instructors or professors to some capacity. Our main character is in Canada we would call it a sessional instructor. I think in the US they call it like adjunct professor, something like that. Basically, it's not like a tenured professor, so she doesn't have health insurance. She's a contract worker. She has like no money. She is also 27 and she has a PhD, and I'm 27 and I do not have a PhD. And she has this like side hustle where she is a fake girlfriend. She's like a fake date to people that want to bring a date but don't, like, because they don't want explain things to their family. Like for example, if you know you don't want to come out to your family and you just want your family off your back for like one evening, you rent her to bring to your family function, and then you can like she'll pretend to be your girlfriend for the evening or whatever. So that's what she does on the side. Her day job is being like an adjunct professor of theoretical physics. And then the main love interest, He is a tenured professor. He's an experimental physicist, right? So they meet at his brother's, like it's a family function, and his brother brought our main character as his fake date. Elsie is the main girl, Jack's the main guy. Elsie's trying to get a job at Jack's university because she is like desperate for like a tenure track position so that she doesn't have to, be an adjunct anymore, which she hates. She doesn't know that Jack works at that university, just to be clear. At the job interview, it's discovered that the university that she's trying to get into so badly, and she wants that job so badly, Jack is one of the like faculty there. So that's where kind of shit hits the fan. She is someone that has a really hard time being authentic with people. She feels as though she cannot be herself. She feels as though she has to lie to people and to pretend to be someone that she's not for people to like her. She has this superpower, she calls it, where she can tell what the other person wants her to be, and she will just be that. So at a job interview, for example, she'll be like, I can tell she wants me to be like this, so I will be like this. My best friend, I don't have to pretend very much with her, but she wants me to like this thing. So I just, it's a harmless thing. So I just say I like this thing. So it goes from like this, level. So like she says to her best friend that she likes certain kinds of movies that she actually hates. Very like minor, to something really extreme cases, like in terms of relationships that she's in, like romantic relationships, for example. She basically has no boundaries and like extremely poor self-expression and like authenticity, like ability to handle being authentic with other people, because she just has such deep, massive issues being thought of as acceptable to other people, just as she is. And the only person that she cannot sense who they want her to be is Jack. So she has kind of no choice but to be exactly herself, like authentically herself with Jack, because she can't tell what he wants from her. This book really changed my perspective on a lot of things. I recognized a lot of myself in Elsie, problems like with authenticity and like be feeling comfortable expressing my own self and like what I think. It had a huge impact on me because of that storyline. It really made me realize that like we owe it to people in our lives to be truthful with them, because if you think you're doing someone else a favor by like pretending to be someone you're not around them, you're actually robbing them of the experience of knowing the real you. And not only that, you're also making yourself feel like shit and like robbing your own precious time, of like spending time as yourself. And that really sucks. That was really transformative for me this year, and I owe it to this book. Like, it's insane that a rom-com changed my life. Like, not only that, it was also just hilarious. I for the first time understood why people read rom-coms, and I for the first time understood the meaning of like romantic comedy. Like, it's meant to be funny. Most rom-coms are not that funny. I realized after reading this, I realized why I was never into rom-coms before. It's because I didn't know my best friend Allie Hazelwood laugh out loud funny. Like, I didn't just like huff out a laugh. Like, I burst out laughing like a crazy hyena in my chair in my living room, like reading this book, like literally cackling. I've never experienced that before in my life, except for this other book I'm going to talk about later. Best rom-com. Love theoretically. The next category. This category is called deep romance. And the book that I picked for the worst deep romance I read is also the worst book for the category of depressing classic. So this book is called Lady Chatterley's Lover. Oh my god. Again, like, I covered this in my mid-year wrap-up, but essentially it's just a lot of like thoughts and inner monologue of the author The author clearly just wanted to say some shit, and instead of writing like a nonfiction essay about what they were thinking, they wrote a fiction novel. And the fiction novel kind of sucks. I'm sure that it was scandalous for the 1928. For 2025, it's not scandalous, it's just really boring and uncomfortable at parts, not because of the material, but because of the language used, and because of the unlikability of the main two characters. They are just really insufferable people. Both of them are terrible individuals. The like sex that they have is really uncomfortable to read. Again, not because it's like, oh my god, I'm so scandalized, but because it's just like gross. Like it's like cringe. They talk to his penis like in the book. And you know, when I read that part, I was just like, okay, I'm done. This is the last straw for me. Like, I started this book being like, wow, this is kind of cool. Like, I was expecting it to be really cool. I was really excited for this book. I thought it would have like pastoral themes and like really interesting like cottagecore vibes and, you know, cool like environmentalism thoughts on like sexuality, but like it was really boring, and they were talking to his penis, and I was just like, I'm done. This is actually quite insane. The pastoral themes were cool. Like the environmentalist streak is definitely there, but it's not anything special, honestly, I think. Same with like the sexism and the classism that is covered in this book. I'm sure for the 1920s, it was all very radical, and this book was censored. So, like, I respect the author, you know, for grinding. It's nothing special at this point, and I found it really boring. Okay, for the category of the best deep romance that I read in 2025, the winner is Call Me By Your Name. This book is insane. This whole year, I was thinking a lot about the concept of time passing and remembrance and memory and the tragedy of the human experience. Call Me By Your Name really sums it up. It is a romance novel, like it is about a romance, but it mostly uses romance as a means to really fixate on how tragic it is that we are all born to die and we are all just passing through this life. The concept of memory, how fleeting it is, remembrance. It's really heart wrenching. Like, it's the fleeting nature of life and of joy and of love. All of that is in this book. I want to say a little bit more about this book, but I just like forgot what I thought. So I'm glad that I keep a reading journal. But basically, okay, here. It gets the feeling of the dread that comes of knowing a separation is coming so well. I felt every moment of the characters experienced. I think every human on earth has felt that at one point or another. The pain of knowing the moment is coming to an end, and the pain of going on living and only having the remembering from that point onwards. Like, you know, that feeling of like knowing that this moment is going to end, when it's like a really beautiful moment and you know it's going to end, and it's just like terrible but awesome, like bittersweet feeling. This book is that feeling in its entirety, and it's just, I've never read anything like that before. There's a quote from this book that really summarized it for me. He came, he left. Nothing else had changed. I had not changed. The world hadn't changed. Yet nothing would be the same. All that remains is dream making and strange remembrance. Fuck. Like, oh my god. It's such a, like, that quote to me kind of summarizes the entire feeling of the book. Ugh. Like, what a wonderful book. Absolutely loved it. Anyways, again, the category of depressing classic, the worst is Lady Chatterley's Lover. I couldn't really pick another depressing classic because I read a ton of classics this year, but none of them were really like depressing except for Lady Chatterley's Lover and this other one I'm going to talk about. So the best depressing classic I read this year is Stoner. Holy shit. I don't want to spend too long talking about it because it makes me depressed because it's a depressing book. But it's about this guy's life. His last name is Stoner, and he becomes an English professor at this like university somewhere in America, University of Missouri. It's just his life, you know, and it's super depressing. It's kind of like Call Me by Your Name in some ways. Like, it talks a lot about remembering. It talks about the meaninglessness. It's very existential as well. I think it was actually inspired by Albert Camus. To be honest with you, actually, fun fact, when I was picking my depressing classic for the year, it was really between The Outsider by Camus and The Stoner. The Outsider almost made it to the worst one just because I had to pick a book. But then, like, I really didn't, I don't think it was the worst at all. Like, I loved it overall. So I just couldn't put it in the worst category. The themes are very similar, like the existentialism, the meaninglessness, you know, how life is really just nothing really matters and we make our own meaning. If you put someone's life on a page, how depressing and how real it will look and how not romanticized it'll look. There's just like no whimsy in this book at all. Which like, I don't really like that personally. I like a bit of whimsy, which is why I called it a depressing classic. I like a book that has like drama and whimsy or some sort of like beautiful imagery, for example. So Stoner, in the category of depressing classic, is the best because it's the book I think about a lot. I don't try to think about it very much because it's depressing and I don't really want to always have that, you know, feeling. I like to feel whimsy and I enjoy the drama of other books, but this one is really special just because I'd never read anything like that before, and the existentialism of it is really fascinating to me, or at least was when I read it for the first time. It's also a book, it's considered a campus novel, so it's a book that takes place in its entirety in university. Really awesome. So yeah, very dark academia. The next category is paranormal romance. The worst paranormal romance I read this year is Mate by Ali Hazelwood. It is the second book to the best paranormal romance I read this year, which is Bride by Ali Hazelwood. The reason that I think Mate was the worst is because the character that we follow, that we get introduced to in The Bride, is so different from the character that we end up, like, the characterization of that character is vastly different in Mate. It's a completely different person. So I'm just gonna introduce The Bride first. It's kind of like an urban fantasy. It's set in the city that's literally called The City, and it's about vampires and werewolves, and there's humans, and they all know about each other, so it's not like some sort of secret. The vampires are chill with the humans, and the werewolves are chill with the humans, but the werewolves and the vampires are not chill. They hate each other. In order to like bridge the gap or whatever, one vampire girl gets married to a werewolf guy, and the vampire girl, she has kind of an ulterior motive because she's out looking for her adoptive sister, like her best friend, and she thinks that the werewolf guy has something to do with it, and so that's why she gets married. That best friend's name is Serena. We follow the events of Serena's like journey post the end of Bride, where so at the end of Bride she meets the like pack leader, this other pack leader whose name completely escapes me, and she ends up being her, so spoiler alert, I don't know, she ends up being his mate. Serena is Cohen's mate, and when we get introduced to Cohen in The Bride, he's this like unhinged guy. Like, he's kind of gives a little bit like Deadpool vibes. Like, he's like insane, violent, and funny, like just an interesting character, you know. I really enjoyed his character, this like unhinged, like crazy nature of him, and I was really excited for him to be like the main character in Mate. And then I get to Mate, maybe like 50% of the way through, it made me realize that he is actually completely different in this book. He is like this boring lumberjack, flannel wearing, I don't know, like boring dude, and he like there's nothing unhinged about him in Mate. There's nothing funny about him. He's just this kind of like mildly rude man. He's not funny, he's not interesting, he's really boring and he's rude to her. I was just like, where did you go? Like, I was so excited. I was so excited for this crazy guy. And then I got like the most boring guy in the world. Like, I think my expectations were so much higher. Also, it wasn't really that funny. Like, I mean, the book itself was like okay. Like, it's an Ali Hazelwood. I don't think she is capable of writing like a genuinely bad book, but like it just wasn't as funny. Yeah, overall, unfortunately, a letdown. But Bride, on the other hand, is the best paranormal romance I read in 2025, and it is so fucking good. It was my first Ali Hazelwood, so I didn't really know what the hell to expect. I did read some of her fanfics before, so I was sort of familiar with her writing style, but obviously fanfics are so different from like actual published fiction. So I wasn't really sure what to expect, and I was blown away with how amazing her writing is. I absolutely love her. She is my icon now. Bride is a really funny book. It's also really interesting in terms of like its fantasy elements. The characters were so well written. The child was quite annoying. There's a kid character that I really don't like, but other than that, great characters. The main male character in this one is amazing. Yeah, like the romance was really cute. Maybe because I didn't have any expectations. Overall, I just remember laughing a lot. Then, cozy fantasy. Okay, the worst cozy fantasy that I read of 2025 is a book that isn't so bad, but I just had to pick like the worst cozy fantasy book. That would be Half a Soul. Overall, it's really not too bad, but I just found some of the characteristics of the main character to be like annoying. It's set in Regency era England, so that's really cute, but it is about a girl who her mom made a bargain with this like fairy king or whatever, and half of her soul, half of this girl's soul ends up in the fairy and half of her soul ends up in the real world. And it follows her journey, and like she meets a bunch of different people and blah blah blah, shit happens. Overall, I actually liked this one. Now that I think about it, like I actually enjoyed it while I was reading it. The main cast of characters was really awesome. It talks a lot about injustices of Regency England. It talks about war. It talks about like the poor houses, the classism. Those elements were really interesting, and the romance itself is really cute and interesting. The like magical kind of element was really cute, but it wasn't really a book that made a huge impression on me overall. The main character is a little self-righteous. That was my biggest kind of problem with the book, is that it's about a character who's missing half of her soul, but she's not morally gray at all. She's actually portrayed as the moral beacon of the book, and she like is on her high horse like judging her cousin for like not having the same moral compass as her, and that just kind of annoyed me because it was like, you are missing half of her soul and yet you're like so good. I was just a little bit annoyed by that. Give it a shot. It's really not that bad. I just had to pick a worst one. The best cozy fantasy I read this year is the second installment of Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. So this one is called Emily Wilde's Map of the Otherlands. Ugh, I'm so excited to finish this series next year. I only have one left. Obviously, it's a trilogy so far. This was not as like whimsical and magical and fantasy-esque and like not as folkloric, I would say, as the first installment, so the Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. But it was also very like, it was about fairies. It was set in the mountains. It continues like the adventure of Emily Wilde, this like scholar in the University of Cambridge, as a scholar of dreadology, and it's supposed to be like neurodivergent rep as well. She's a little annoying, but like not in a way that makes me want to stop reading. She's a little annoying in like a realistic way. Like she's just a normal person. She's a realistic depiction of a woman. You know what I mean? Like she's not really super nice. She's not very kind, but she's not insufferable. She's not evil. She's just, she's just this person. She's just a scholar. She's not a warm person, but she is also not like void of ethics. So she feels bad when she messes up. She apologizes for her mistakes, even though she like hates doing it, but she like does it anyway. The main love interest is amazing. I freaking love him. His name is Wendell. He's great. And overall, like the setting, it's set in like these in like Switzerland slash Austria in like the Alps, I guess. The fairies are really awesome. This one is more like mountainous, like cold mountains rather than like snowy Sweden or whatever, like snowy Nordic atmosphere vibe that the first one had. I saved kind of like the most impactful one for last. I think that it only is fair that I talk about the Gothic installment last, because the Gothic was really the theme for this entire year, and the Gothic is the reason I started this channel. Gothic literature is the reason I began making videos, and it is the reason I decided to do a lot of things. Like the Gothic in general just changed my life, honestly, this year. I'm just so grateful I discovered this genre this year, especially like Gothic classics. So I think it's only fair that I talk about this like beautiful, life-changing for me genre last, as the most impactful of the year. So the worst Gothic I read this year, it's not a classic. Okay, there's gonna be probably honorable mentions because I simply couldn't pick one Gothic. So I'm gonna talk about the best ones later, but the worst Gothic is, again, it's kind of like Half a Soul, where I just had to pick the worst one. I really don't hate this book at all, but I just had to pick the worst one. It's Interview with a Vampire by Anne Rice. The main reason I picked this one is just because it was quite boring, and I'd watched the show. The show, compared with the book, is a lot better of an experience, in my opinion. It is heavily inspired by the books, but it's not a direct adaptation of the book. It takes a lot of liberties, but I really loved watching it, so it kind of inspired me to read the novel. And I still haven't finished the show because I wanted to finish the book before I finished the show. But this, I actually like would recommend you read it. It's just that it's a little boring, and by a little I mean it's very boring. But overall, I actually liked it. I think that the context of the book really helps. I found out that the book was actually written by Anne Rice when she was going through, I mean, I guess it just doesn't end, but when she was beginning to go through her grief of losing her daughter, her 5 or 6-year-old daughter who passed away from cancer, and she was like in the throes of like alcoholism and everything. And knowing that for me really changed the experience. I found that out towards the end of reading the book, and it really changed my perspective on the book, honestly. This book contains a character called Claudia, who is a 6-year-old vampire. So, I just think it's so beautiful and bittersweet, so human, of this author who's going through grief of losing her 6-year-old daughter to write about an immortal 6-year-old girl. How wonderful and terrible is that? What a way to channel your grief. It's so interesting to me and really poignant, I guess, and creative, I think. But yeah, terrible. Like, so many different feelings I feel about this book, honestly. The standout for me was the depiction of grief. The main character in the novel deals with a lot of grief as well. And you can just tell, like, after I found out that the author was dealing with grief while she was writing this book, it became so clear to me. I love how I said it was the worst book and then I just go on raving about it. What I also really loved, I forgot about it until I read it in my book journal, is that it depicts something that I don't usually see depicted in books. So that is people that don't heal from their trauma and people that don't get over their grief. I think that it's interesting because usually when you read a book, and someone is going through something terrible, they usually get over this. they usually get over their trauma. That's their journey, or they're kind of on the healing path. This book is a depiction of someone who does not heal, who does not get over their trauma, who's not on a path of healing. There's a very fine line, I think, when it comes to books about not healing or not getting over their, like, the character's trauma, like torture porn we call it, like where it's just the character constantly going through something really terrible, and it's not really cathartic, it's not really sad, it's not really anything. One book that I've personally read that felt like that was The Poppy War. I know people love that book, but that's how it felt for me. It was just torture porn. This book is not like that at all. So it depicts someone who doesn't get over their trauma and is not on the path of healing, and it talks about that phenomenon, but it doesn't feel disingenuous, I guess. It doesn't feel forced. It just feels very authentic. And I think that that's what makes it so special. All that is left is embracing the darkness and nothingness. I think that's why this book is so popular with, like, people that are involved in the subculture of goth, because it does embrace the nothingness and the darkness. The reason that I picked it as the worst is clearly, like, I actually like this book a lot. It's just boring. In comparison with the show, the, I guess, homosexual, like, overtones in the show are undertones in this book, and I would just prefer them to be overtones, like more overt and expressed. But you know, that's whatever, that's the choice that the author made. Also, what I wasn't a huge fan of is, like, the fact that the main character is kind of like, he starts out as a slave owner. Not a fan of that. In the show, it's not like that, so I prefer that depiction more. But the central themes are really, I think, wonderfully depicted. For the best gothic novel I read in 2025, holy shit, I don't even know, like, where to start. Every single gothic classic I read this year was an amazing. To be honest, The Romance of the Forest, Zafloya was one of my favorites. All of those books, oh, The Castle of Otranto, the first, you know, all of those books are so special to me. They are the reason I started my channel, and I will always think of them so fondly. The book that I think about a lot, like every time I think about the Gothic, the first book that pops in my head is this book, and it is The Monk by Matthew Lewis. It's just really special, and you know, it's a interesting case with this one, because usually I don't like books that depict female character going through something terrible like sexual assault, especially in graphic details. I really don't like that, especially if it's by, like, a male author. I find usually it's not empathetic, and it's just used as, like, a showstopper. It's usually sensationalized, I find. But in this book, it was maybe sensationalized, but because it is a gothic novel, and because this novel deals a lot with oppression, the repercussions misogyny has on women and our society in general, I think because of that context, it kind of works, you know, because the sexual assault is not used here as a way of being like, or rather, it is used as a way of being like, look at this crazy thing, you know what I mean? There's more to it. It's not just the sensational crazy thing. It's also like, look at what the fuck is wrong with our society. It puts a mirror to our society, or to the society of the 1700s, but I mean also to our modern society as well. And it does so in this really effective way. So this book is about, there's kind of like two different stories in one, but the main overarching plot is about this monk who meets this kind of person, woman question mark. If you read it, you understand why I say question mark. It's his demise. So he is this pious guy. We start out with him being like this religious leader, like he's a figure in Madrid that everyone looks up to, and then he meets this person, and then this person serves as an excuse for him to descend into being a really terrible person. his descent into sin is like documented from that point on. I find that it approaches these topics with so much empathy. This really was a page turner. I know for a classic it's kind of hard for a classic to be a page turner. This one really was a page turner for me. This is why I picked The Monk. I think the rest of them, except for Zafloya is also really fast paced and a page turner, but pretty much every other one I had to, really be disciplined about reading them. This one was a lot more of like okay, let's see what happens. I'm actually really excited. This was my 2025. Thank you so much for watching. I'm just so excited. This channel is bringing me so much joy. Yeah, thank you for watching and for supporting me.